Welcome into the New Orleans Saints podcast. You'll hear from players, coaches, broadcasters, and writers that cover the NFL on a daily basis. The New Orleans Saints podcast starts right now. Here's your host, Erin Summers.
Welcome into the New Orleans Saints podcast. I'm Erin Summers. Prep is underway for the Cleveland Browns, and energy at practice, especially after that win Sunday over the Falcons, remains high under interim head coach Darren Rizzi.
Yeah, well, listen. In my opinion, I think there's a formula that we went with last week, and we want to duplicate that same formula. Now, that part of that formula is energy, passion, all that. And so, I think I was the same guy today on the practice field that I was every day all last week. And so that's not going to change. And so, listen, I mentioned this to you guys. I mentioned it to the players. I think, one of the challenges is it's a little bit easier to buy in that first wave, if you will. But I think that now the players know the expectation, they know the tempo, they know how we're doing things, and the changes. I think actually today went a little bit smoother than last Wednesday. Last Wednesday was a little bit choppy, in my opinion. Because it was brand new. I thought we practiced a little bit better today. Last week there was a lot of nuances that maybe we hadn't worked through before and things like that. So I'm hoping that we keep that energy level the same. That's the intent, and I hope that we just be a little bit more effective. And so listen, there were some great things last week, but I also think there's a lot of room for improvement. We certainly didn't play by no means did we play a perfect game, and so there's plenty of stuff to work on. But that tempo and the daily grind and there's still no substitute for that. So we're going to try to keep manufacturing the same thing week after week.
Rizzi said that the focus this week is on finishing better across the board. There were a few too many explosive plays allowed, and the run defense has to be better. Offensively, Rizzi liked the increased play action and connecting on some of those deep balls to Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Here's Derek Carr.
We connected and made the plays down the field. I think with Rashid and with Chris out, maybe they played a little bit tighter in some situations, so we were able to take advantage of that down the field. There's been teams that have just, whether it's single high, two high, doesn't matter. Like corners are playing on top, just forcing you to throw everything underneath. But this game was not the case. They were kind of underneath, and safeties were low on some things, trying to cut crossers and things like that. So. Every game is different, and every team, plays things. No matter what they show on film, they can play things differently during the game. And so our guys did a great job of just adjusting to the cut safeties and being able to connect on those. I thought, MVS making those plays down the field for us really just opened things up, and, he sparked us for sure.
A big boost for the offense could come with the return of Eric McCoy, who was back for the second week and limited at practice Wednesday. Rizzi said the center is day-to-day, but him playing on Sunday is definitely on the table. Cleveland has dealt with injuries at the quarterback position, which means Jameis Winston will start his third game with the Browns and return to the Superdome on Sunday. Safety Tyrann Mathieu couldn't help but laugh thinking about going up against his old teammate.
It's going to be exciting. It's going to be funny. James is a good dude. He probably tells me he's going to throw the ball at me before he actually do it. You know what I mean? So he's one of those kind of competitors. But it'll be fun to see him. He knows us. We know him. I'm pretty sure it'll be somewhat of a homecoming. You know what I mean? A lot of people in New Orleans love the guy. We do too. But yeah, I'm expecting a shot first play of the game, James. So throw it up there. You know what I mean?
For some more insight into the Browns, let's bring in Cleveland play-by-play broadcaster and longtime NFL reporter, Andrew Siciliano. Andrew, thank you for joining me on the New Orleans Saints podcast. You are now the voice of the Browns. How is that going for you?
Yeah. Hi, Erin. Great to be here, and thanks for having me. It's good to connect. It's been a crazy ride, and I've said it multiple times. I'll say it again here to you. The circumstances that brought me to Cleveland were not that anyone wanted. Jim Donovan, legend of all legends, 40 years, a pillar in the community in Northeast Ohio. I was such a fan. And to get the call right before the season began that they needed somebody. Look, I was raised a Browns fan. It's a dream come true, but you didn't, you certainly didn't want it to be because Jim wasn't feeling well. And obviously we lost Jim a couple of weeks ago, and the Browns got an emotional win after it. It has been a roller coaster of emotions. We all wish Jim were still here, wish the team were winning a little bit more as well. But It's been an exhausting and rewarding experience, and I think we're all kind of trying to wrap our emotions around this season.
The Browns sit 2-7 coming off of a bye here. What has the first half of the season been like?
I think going back to the last two games, I think really tells a story for both the Saints and the Browns. The Saints get to 3-7. Obviously, the playoffs are a bit of a long shot here, but you saw in that game the potential that this team potentially could have here. Obviously, the Lattimore trade kind of changes maybe the forecast for the second half and maybe the organizational direction. But you're like, hey, it's here. Like, I know this team can do it. Did it the first 2 weeks and did it again this week. The Browns are in somewhat of a similar situation. They beat the Ravens, and you go, yes, like it's there. Like we know it's there. You just got to get to it again. And then they came out and they lost to the Chargers. And that was really the disappointing. They've all been disappointing, but that was the one where, at least from my perspective, you say, well, if you had found a way to win that game, you're 3-6, which is still not good. But you're 3-6 heading into a bye, going on the road, not to take the Saints lightly. This is me speaking, not the organization. A team that has an interim head coach, right? And then maybe you could win that game and get to 4-6, and then you come back home short week next week with the Steelers on Thursday Night Football, division game, prime time, big lights. You could beat the Steelers at home. You've shown you could do that in prime time, and you're like, man, you're playing for something. Didn't happen. And so the Browns head to the bye week. They're healthy this week. I think that's significant, other than JOK, which is a massive loss. But they took the field Monday, for the most part, healthy. Jordan Hicks is back. And you have to find a way in the Jameis revenge game this week to start stacking some wins.
With the quarterback situation there, it started out with Deshaun Watson. He gets hurt. Then it goes to Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And now you're at Jameis Winston. And you've seen in 2 games the up and down nature that can be Jameis Winston.
You guys know it well.
Love him. Love the energy that he brings.
Absolutely.
But those 3 interceptions against the Chargers, you guys unable to get a win there, as you mentioned. What has been, the feel on the offensive side in the locker room around the changing of the guard there?
Listen, people love Jameis. Love him. Love him. Love him. You know this. He is a lovable guy. Let's put it that way. He has an energy and an enthusiasm to him that is genuine. It is authentic. It is not an act. Jameis is a force of nature. He's a different dude. And you felt that in that first game against the Ravens. He was slinging it, and last minute touchdown to Cedric Tillman, win the game. The place went nuts. It felt like 2023 again. But hidden in that first game was the fact that the Ravens dropped a couple of picks, including one by Kyle Hamilton on the second to last play from scrimmage, offensively for the Browns, that would have ended the game and would have given the Browns a loss and the Ravens a win. There were multiple moments in that game. Rashad Bateman losing a deep ball from Lamar Jackson in the sun. Dustin Hopkins' field goal hitting off, doinking off an upright and going through somehow miraculously. There were moments in that game where everything went their way, the Browns' way. And you knew that if you came out against the Chargers and threw it to the other team multiple times, they wouldn't drop it this time. And they did. They did not, rather. He did, and they did not. So I think there is enthusiasm. There is optimism that the Jameis we saw against the Ravens can be the guy you see in the second half of the season. You just hope that the Jameis you saw against the Chargers isn't the half of the personality that comes out more than the other.
I felt like we had the football gods in our favor in this past game as well, with Young Hoku missing 3 field goals, because that doesn't happen. So I understand what you're saying about that Ravens game. It just kind of felt like it was going to be the Browns that come out on top there. Going into this game and coming out of a bye, how much do you think that helps where the Browns are in their preparation, their ability to get healthy, and kind of kick off the second half stretch for them the right way?
It'll be fascinating, honestly, to see how they come out of this, because this was a team that had aspirations for a deep playoff run. This team that made the playoffs a year ago, obviously disappointing loss in Houston in the wild card round, but a team that went, I don't want to say all in, but did everything it could to bring the roster back intact, added some veterans like the guy I mentioned, Jordan Hicks, who, when he has been on the field, has played very well, but has battled injuries for a lot of the year. This was not the way the season was supposed to go. So with the trading of Amari Cooper, which
Mhm.
was surprising when it happened in retrospect, you know what? A third round pick. Cedric Tillman has stepped up. You get a third round pick in return from Buffalo. It's okay. The Zadarius Smith trade, Isaiah McGuire has played well. You have Obo Okoronkwo. Um, but curious to see what those trades do emotionally for the team. I think everyone needed the reset. But instead of, as I said, going off on this second half journey at 3-6, which again, still not good, still not good. But at least you could see, all right, there's a path forward here in the AFC. I'll give you an example. I was on Monday Night Football last night here in Los Angeles, the Dolphins and the Rams.
Mhm.
The Dolphins are a 3-win team, but they feel they saved their season last night by getting to 3 wins because in the AFC, you're in it. Are you deep in it? No, but there's a path forward now. And that's what the Browns could have had. So without that, what do you see? I know Jameis is going to be ready for this game, right? I I know he's going to give a heck of a pregame speech. It may or may not involve eating W's. He's going to be ready and he's going to be slinging it. And sign me up for that. Like I want to see that. That is a fun moment. And then you get the Steelers next week, prime time. Like I said, fun moment. Like each of these games, if you go by the let's go 1-0 mantra, this team is going to be ready. Big picture, though, it is a tough uphill climb.
Kevin Stefanski said this week that the team's focus is to still win.
Yeah.
He's not in the the evaluation process trying to see what young talent they have and plan for the future. It does seem like some of the young players have been moved up the depth chart in some areas. So where do you see things?
Well, like I mentioned, Cedric Tillman steps into Amari Cooper's shoes. He's had 33 targets the last 3 weeks. He has stepped up, and he is now playing like the guy they thought they were getting out of Tennessee last year as a third-round pick. He's legit. He's becoming a playmaker, and everyone's happy with his development. Isaiah McGuire, a draft pick last year as well on the D line, has been getting more reps, and actually his PFF rate is fantastic in his limited usage this season. He's going to get more reps as well. There are only so many young players on an NFL roster to truly just throw in there blindly. I think you're going to see more time for Cam Mitchell, the corner, but he's been working a lot in the slot anyway with some of the injuries. You have seen Zach Zinter already on the offensive line, a third-round pick this year, but he has been benched in essence, and also Wyatt Teller is back. So maybe you see more of Zach Zinter. The big question mark, as I finally get to answer your question, because I ramble, Erin, thank you, is Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Is at what point during this season do the Rams turn to their 5th-round pick from a year ago and say we have to evaluate to figure out our quarterback picture more clearly for next season? I'm a big DTR fan. I liked him coming out of UCLA here in my backyard in LA. I liked him in the pre-draft process. He has played very well in the preseason the last 2 years. He has had his moments in the regular season, helping beat the Steelers a year ago at home in Cleveland with a big 4th-quarter drive. He has had some also not so great moments in the preseason as well when he's been thrown to the fire. So that is the big question mark. When you talk about youthful evaluation here, or evaluation of the kids, it is Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And honestly, we might learn a lot about that this week. I mean, if Jameis comes out and plays like he did a week ago against the Chargers, then maybe you accelerate the DTR timeline. If he comes out and plays well, then it probably slows it down.
What does the offense have to do to play well? Because right now they're one of the last overall ranked offensives in the league and in passing as well.
Well, it's run the ball effectively in my estimation to open up that pass game. Look, under Deshaun Watson in the first 8 games of the year, 7, 8, whatever it was, losing track of weeks now. Nothing. The offensive numbers were what they were. I mean, obviously they weren't good. Jameis gets in, he gets his 1 game. They were lights out. Last week they kind of crashed back down, although the overall numbers with some quote unquote garbage time fourth quarter stats probably got padded a little bit. They needed to run the ball consistently. They also need to kind of figure out in which direction this offense goes when it comes to scheme. And that was really kind of hanging over this team the entire year, with Ken Dorsey coming in as the new OC, Kevin Stefanski maintaining play calling until these past 2 weeks. Stefanski was asked about that Monday. Now that Ken Dorsey is calling plays, what is your overall analysis? And he said, well, we're 1-1. That's the analysis. So find a way to run the ball a little bit better. Probably Nick Chubb, I think, is finally rounding into Nick Chubb shape. That takes a year sometimes, even from your return from a knee injury. It wasn't just his ACL. It was everything in his left knee.
Yeah.
Like, you name it, gone. So that's a process, and it really has been a process the entire year for the entire offense.
Defensively, what are the strengths of the team here?
Defensively, Myles Garrett pass rush. Obviously, he knows Darius Smith this year, but really the entire D line has been a strength. It was a position from which they could have dealt because they have so much depth in my estimation. At linebacker, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, JOK, who's out. He's on IR. He's going to miss his second game with the neck injury. In my estimation, was playing at an all-pro level, certainly a Pro Bowl level. That's a popularity contest these days, but I think an all-pro level. He's a shapeshifter. He's as good a TFL, bring you down behind the line of scrimmage linebacker as there is in football. So that is a huge loss. They like to play a lot of man. They like to bring pressure. Jim Schwartz is going to blitz. They're susceptible to some deep shots and explosives because, you play some man, you're going to get beaten. The unfortunate thing against the Chargers was they had some miscommunication on the back end. Denzel Ward was beaten a couple of times for long touchdowns, whether they were both his fault or neither was his fault. That's open to interpretation, but they have to limit those explosives, and they're definitely going to bring the pressure.
Yeah, he had only allowed one touchdown all year prior to that game. So going into this one against the Saints under new interim head coach Darren Rizzi, how do you even begin to prepare for what you're going to see?
It's a good question. I'm glad that the Browns were not going in there for the first game under Coach Riz, because there's always that what are we walking into thing when it comes to an interim head coach taking over in his first game. Look, the Saints look like a different team, obviously. And you hope, at least from a Browns perspective, that they kind of come back down to earth a little bit. From a Saints perspective, you hope to ride the interim wave here. Clint Kubiak showed that he's a pretty darn good play caller. Certainly the first 2 weeks of the year with Derek healthy, he had everyone on their heels, and you guys were scoring 40 points a game. So there's familiarity certainly between Kevin Stefanski and Clint Kubiak when it comes to offensive systems. They are not both pure Shanahan system guys, but there's enough crossover here where, you know what they're going to throw at you. But there's always the Taysom Hill quotient, and there's always Alvin Kamara's open field explosiveness. The Browns have struggled with tackling in open space, tackling on the perimeter this year. We saw that against the Commanders. We saw it a little bit against the Eagles. They need to do a good job tackling on the edge, tackling on the perimeter, or here come the explosives.
Those sound like similar issues that the Saints defense has had as well. Those are areas that they're still trying to clean up, the explosive plays, the missed tackles. What do you think this game's going to come down to?
I think it's going to come down to turnovers. Which of these quarterbacks gives it away, and which of these defenses can take it away and turn it into points. Fun fact, although not fun for the Browns, they will not have an interception in uniform this year, on Sunday, that is. JOK, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, is the only player on the team with a pick. The Browns have one interception as a team. He's injured. So for the second consecutive week, they will not dress an interception.
I saw that,
So
and
that's an issue.
didn't know if I believe that stat.
It's actually true. JOK had a great red zone pick of Jaden Daniels in Washington, like amazing play. That Browns, I don't know, Erin, what the number is on dropped picks.
I was going to say there've been close ones.
Oh, they've dropped so many. Jim Schwartz was asked last week, the last game the Browns played, something like do you know how many picks they've dropped this year? Or do you know what the actual number is? And I think he said something, he was laughing when he said, he goes, no, I don't. Like, I don't want to know. I'd be too depressed. So again, I'm paraphrasing, but yeah, they've dropped them all, every last one of them.
I feel like there's some familiarity between these two teams, though, even on the coaching side. Obviously, with Jameis Winston, this team knows very well what he likes to do, what he's good at, what he might not be as good at. But the coaches have spent some time each other in various places as well.
Yeah. It's funny how you don't need 6 degrees of separation in the NFL. It's really usually 2 or 3 degrees. There aren't that many secrets. It's a pretty, as big as the NFL is with 32 teams, everybody knows everybody here. So rarely do you face a team in which, like, there's no crossover.
Mhm.
Even let's say last week, I mean, playing the Chargers, right? It's Jim Harbaugh, not John Harbaugh, but Jim has half of Baltimore with him, from GM down, Joe Ortiz, all the way down, Jesse Minter. Obviously came from Michigan. Mike McDonald was with Jesse Minter before Mike McDonald went to Seattle. And then there's Greg Roman, who went to John Carroll in Cleveland, but was the Ravens offensive coordinator, and the Browns faced him forever. Go back to Philadelphia. Stefanski's from Philly, knows half the staff. Jim Schwartz, former Eagles DC, won a Super Bowl with that. Like, it's everybody knows everybody. I mean, rarely do you face a team where you're like, wow, don't know what this guy's going to run. So there's that.
Do you feel like the Browns have found an identity this season?
No. Offensively, the big question is, how do they get back to their identity? Defensively, we know their identity. It just hasn't been as effective as last season when they had the number 1 defense in football. Traditionally, the number 1 defense in football mantle is hard to maintain in consecutive years. And the Browns have not been able to do that. Offensively, it just got off to not an awkward start, but you had injuries to both tackles to open up the season, and then just a different injury every week on the offensive line where you're always moving and shifting pieces, never got into a groove. And no, I mean, offensively, that's what the Browns have to figure out, and that's no secret, is what exactly is our identity, and can we get back to a team that can effectively run the football? Because regardless of whether you want to play spread and go shotgun and 5 wide, or whether or not you want to line up in 11, 12, 13 personnel, whatever, and run it downhill or run wide zone, whatever, you have to run the football one way or the other. You have to. And the Browns have not been able to necessarily do that this year for a litany of reasons. And, they're a bit in flux. But, with some self-scouting over the bye week, maybe we come out and answer those questions this week.
You've spent a while covering the NFL. Are you excited to get back to New Orleans and be in the Dome?
I am. Trying to think when was the last time I was in New Orleans? It's been a while. With the Rams, was there in 2018 multiple times. Sorry for the memories.
Yeah.
Preseason, we had that wild preseason game where Sean Payton was throwing challenge flags in the 4th quarter of the final preseason game. When the preseason's over, let's go home, Sean. And he's throwing challenge flags and making the Rams punt again, and like, it was ridiculous. That was a fun one. And then obviously the NFC Championship game. Sorry, guys. Jared Goff did get his face mask turned sideways on the 1-yard line the previous possession.
Okay. All right. Do we need to end this right now?
Yes, it was absolutely pass interference. Absolutely pass interference. We all agree. We also have to agree that Jared Goff absolutely had his face mask Linda Blaired on the previous possession, pulled 90 degrees sideways. His nose was on the inside of his helmet. And that wasn't called on the previous. Both can be true, Erin.
Okay. All right.
Both. Can we agree? Both
yes,
can be true.
There can be multiple missed calls.
Yes. A missed call in the final minute is no different than a missed call with 6 minutes to go. They're both. Anyway, I digress. Saints fans don't hate me. Where was I? Yes, I miss New Orleans. New Orleans is awesome. Haven't been in a long time, and definitely looking forward to getting back there.
Yeah, I'm excited about this game. I think when we saw the schedule come out, Jameis Winston's with the Browns, Deshaun Watson's a quarterback. You're like, all right, some things could happen. You never know. But I didn't think it was actually going to happen, where Winston would be the starting quarterback coming back in the Superdome the next season.
Yeah, this is a fun one. Is this the 17th? I think this is the 17th game matchup. I could be wrong. We get the NFC East this year, and obviously this is a one-off game. The way the standings and the cross conference stuff worked.
Right.
I'm happy when I saw it. I circled that one. It was a fun one. Browns have some good road trips this year. Vegas, this one most notably. So hopefully this one goes better than Vegas.
I don't know. I mean, I would be okay with it going in our favor, but
no, I get it. And plus, I didn't even get to enjoy it. I mean, the game was the game, but I first world problem, had a college game the night before. I had Ohio State for NBC, so I got in the morning of. So there was no fun in Vegas. Not that you can, as an NFL employee, have that much fun in Vegas.
True. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for giving us some insight into the Browns, and we look forward to having you here this weekend.
Hey, looking forward to getting down there and actually saying hi in person, Erin.
Appreciate the time from Andrew and all of the insight into the Browns. I want to acknowledge the loss of someone who was so instrumental to the organization's beginning. Ken Sayer, the team's first team physician and orthopedist. Dr. Sayer joined the franchise at its inception in 1967 and remained in that position for over 20 years. He passed Sunday, November 11th at the age of 94. Our thoughts and prayers are with Sayer's friends and family. Thank you for listening to this podcast. We'll be back with another one on Friday.
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Saints podcast. Join us 3 times per week on NewOrleansSaints.com, the Saints mobile app, or you can download the podcast on iTunes. We'll see you next time, right here on the New Orleans Saints podcast.